Hi there, everyone. Just let me get my camera sorted out. Didn't realize we were going live just this second, but here we are. So I've had a request today to show you how to rework old encaustic paintings. So I'm just going to tilt the camera maybe a little bit lower so that you guys can see what it is I'm doing. We'll get right low today. There we go. Okay, and I'm also going to put it in front, and maybe then you'll get a better view. So this request has come to me from Sophie, and I'll post this on a curated nest, and as well I will bring this to save it into my YouTube videos. So working old encaustic paintings, as you know, is challenging because wax is a sealant, right? So not only is it a paint, but it's also a sealant. And how do you rework that, right? So if you have an old painting, I know I've covered this topic before, so I'm going to pull out the two that I did last time as examples. So this was one painting that obviously had no direction, it had no painting, and I turned it into a cohesive painting in encaustic to show you how that could be done. So this painting had a lot of things going on underneath. And then in this case, I did 3 bands of color. I did an opaque baby blue, I did a band of white, and then I did a band of ivory. Then using different tools, I carved out the trees, right, with whatever color was underneath. In this case, I carved out the circles. And here I just left the white and then carved on either side of it so you see the dark banding. At the bottom, I added a little image transfer of some text, and up here I added a little image. So I can't show you what it looked like before, but you can see that all the underpainting that was done before supported what came afterwards. So that is one example. Here's another example of a mix or an encaustic painting that just had way too much going on. So using an opaque paint, I covered the entire thing in like a slate blue. And then I just started carving out areas, and then so all the colors that were underneath are just carved out areas of the underpainting. And so even though the two had nothing to do with one another before, this painting underneath, it changed completely. And then I added a bit of some white wax and then some collage and pulled that painting together rather quickly. So I pulled out a few backgrounds. This is another one that used to be a painting, and then for one reason or another I decided I didn't like it. So this is typically when I don't like my encaustic backgrounds. It's generally because, for me anyway, it's because I have used them as class instruction. So class instruction always gets muddled because you're using the same panel for a lot of different techniques, a lot of different color, a lot of different everything, and anyway, it just builds up and it turns out to be one big mess. So in that case, I always just take out my favorite tool. So of course, this is the only thing, and I wouldn't be without it. It's my Iwatani torch, and I have other torches, but what I like about this one, as many of you know, is the size of the flame. It can be greatly, see what I mean? It's huge. You can adjust the flame, you can adjust how big you want the flame, you can adjust how concentrated you want that flame. And yeah, so anyway, so basically I would take my painting, and I will show you in a second how I do that, and I would just overfuse and overfuse and overfuse, meaning I melt all the colors together, and eventually they just start to swirl together. And when I say swirl together, it's just like they end up looking like an encaustic, or not encaustic, sorry, like an acrylic pour. All the colors just start to heat and to meld together. And in this case, you can see I have tape on the side, thank goodness. But this one's going to be a bit of a challenge because I have that much wax on it that it all ran over the sides. But now I have a blank slate ready to go. So I have pulled out another painting that was at one point in time in the works, and then I think the whole, whoops, it goes this way, I think the whole thing got a little bit lost. So I'm assuming that this was another class piece. So I'm going to show you how to fuse it out so that you don't want to or sorry, that you don't have to start over by scraping. So a lot of people always say, I'm going to scrape it all off and start. Use the wax you've got on there. You've got a lot of wax, so use it as an underpainting. Never, never try to just scrape it all off. There's no point. If you can possibly save it as under layers, then for sure later on, like I was saying, when you look at like the details of this, when you scrape through, you've got all kinds of great stuff happening underneath that was not planned to be part of this painting, but in the end ended up supporting the design and overall interest in this painting. Okay, so that's, and then in the other one, it was the fact that all of a sudden now we had some trees to carve out, we had some color, we had something interesting going on. So that's all the underpainting as a support. So I'm going to get that camera a little bit further away. There we go. Okay, so I am going to see how well I can get you guys to see what I'm doing here. All right, that's the best I think I can do for now. So I'm going to turn on my torch, and there's not a lot of color differentiation here, but I can see I've got a lot of collage underneath. So this was probably a reattempt at something, and I don't know what's happened, but anyway, it's been a long time since I've picked this piece up, and I'm certainly happy to see what is going on underneath. So the key is to do a slow melt. Now let's say I wanted to save this part. I would just work around it and play with the rest. I find spot fixing really challenging, and not only challenging, it's limiting to your creativity. So if you are a person who's like, oh, you know what, I've made this painting and it didn't turn out quite as well as I had hoped, and I want to fix this one little thing, then this technique is obviously not the best for you, which is just basically start over. This technique really helps if you're just ready to let go and see the potential of what else literally lies beneath. What happens when we become so attached to fixing and fixing and fixing is we never get out of solving the problem, so to speak. So the problem is probably not one little area. The problem is not, you know, I don't know. Anyway, the problem is generally not that. The problem is just that painting is not working. So it is much easier and much more liberating to be able to abandon said project and just walk away from it. Okay, so now you see I have the wax pretty molten, and at this point I could scrape it all off, but I'm not going to, because I'm actually going to use what's underneath and make things start to move. So if collage pops out, that's okay. We can pull it out, we can put it back in. I don't know what's under this, so we're just finding out. So the key is not to heat it all at one time. I'm just going over every area slowly but surely until it all starts to move and work together. So it looks like I've used a lot of clear, and I'm guessing it's over top of a collage base. So I think that piece is coming out. I'll lift it out very easily. Good, maybe I'll save it for another day. Put it on the side. And I'll keep working. So whatever I had going under here was very dark. So, you know, whatever I put on top, I'm going to try and make it much lighter, because all this dark painting is, you know, whatever I was working on that time is no longer speaking to me. And so I don't have a lot of things to mix together, so you're not getting that real effect of the acrylic pour, so to speak, because I don't have a lot of color. I have a lot of clear on top of a dark background. So, but it's all, I think, pretty cohesive at this point, so I'm going to leave it, and it's going to have to set up. There, so I do definitely have it all refused and remelted and reheated. It's way too dark for my liking, and it's way too dark for any collage or anything that I may want to add, so I'm going to very carefully slide it out of the way. And then we will, let's see, which painting should we tackle then? Oh yes, so I have this other one, which this was part of a class, and I think it was on I'm not even sure anymore. I think it was on patinas or something like that. Anyway, the students all played on this board, and it kind of got really out of hand, and the colors are not even that nice. So what I'm going to do, it's been a long time, I'm just going to warm it up. So wax takes a little while to warm up, especially if the painting has been cured, meaning that it has sat on this shelf for probably several years at this point. And so the resin has stabilized the wax to a point where it's not going to melt as easily or warm up as easily as we had hoped. So if I wanted to do a full fuse on this one, meaning I wanted it to be you know, marbleized, I would really have to just keep warming it up slowly but surely. I always get the question, can I use an iron? And on colored wax, I don't use an iron. So only because it just makes mud. It mixes all your colors together. Oh, hi Sophie, there you are. Okay, so yes, in this case, I am just going to warm it up slowly because, like I said, it has been several years. And I think there are parts to this that still have merit. I'm not sure I want to get rid of the whole thing. But that's because it was, like I said, it was a sample board, and now it's ready to maybe be made into a painting. We'll see what happens. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on. It just doesn't work as a painting. Right, so that's often the case, is that we make interesting things, interesting, you know, designs, or interesting collages, or interesting backgrounds, or interesting something, but just because they're interesting and they're pretty and that sort of thing, it doesn't always necessarily mean it's cohesive as a painting. So, so really question your old artworks and just find out what's working, what's not working. In the case of encaustic, it's not as simple as just like people would always say with an acrylic painting, just gesso over it and start over. I actually encourage you to use the underpainting, especially in encaustic, because it's so expensive and it adds such great texture and color that if you just were to abandon it, then it's really just a waste. So this is slowly warming up, and so I think it's pretty good. So I'm going to show you. I've got a bunch of collage around, and I found this image that I like because the colors go with it really nicely. So I'm going to use my homemade Yes paste, and I'm going to apply a very thin coat on the back. And a very thin coat actually on the board. So the tricky part about adding your collage into a wax surface is that the papers, first of all, have to be super thin because we need the wax to be able to go through them. So this is printed on just regular bond paper, cartridge paper, printer paper. And so if I warm it up enough, it should actually be able to adhere itself, but I have to let that dry before I encapsulate it with wax for certain, so that will have to dry. But now if I wanted to, you know, make it a little bit more cohesive, I could use some more collage, or I could use colored waxes. So I'm going to go near here, and I'm going to just put a bit of clear. So what that might do is just kind of make the colors maybe not as harsh. I just find my colors here, and I have to be careful not to go onto the image because it's not dry, but I'm just going to try and attempt to make the colors less harsh by making this just a little more foggy. And then we'll see where we go from there. I'm gonna fuse that. So now I would work the surrounding areas and see if I can incorporate the two parts to become a more cohesive painting. So unlike this one here, where I just melted it all out and I'm going to start over, I would probably in this case start with an opaque paint. And I don't have any opaque paint that's actually melted enough right now to show you, but I would probably just do some opaque paint on here and then carve through and create a painting out of that. And then unlike that one where I want to try and save some of the interesting things that are happening in the painting, I might just try and save some parts but add some other elements to it. Change the focus of the painting altogether. So before, this one was entirely abstract. Now it's going to have a bit more mixed media collage aspect to it. So I encourage you then to work on your paintings a little bit so that they are not as committed, if you will, to what they once were. That's, I guess, the best advice I can offer, is because I'm always seeing people who are just working so hard. They know it's not working, and then they're just trying so hard to save it anyway. And I think, well, if it's not working, then why are you trying so hard to save it? So I think, Sophie, to answer your question, it just really depends on what's not working in your painting and how far you are willing to go to change that. Because if you're not willing to make big changes, you would want to go sort of in this direction. If you want to make big changes, you would go in this direction by melting, fusing everything. So now I'm just adding a few tissue papers and napkins that are in the colors that we find throughout this painting. And that to me is a bit interesting, so I think I would add a bit more. And I don't have to use the Yes paste on this because I'm just building up with the clear, and when I fuse, it'll go right through those thin papers. There we are. So that warm wax, from having previously warmed it up, has now gone through the tissues, through the napkins. And there we go. So I would keep working this piece in this capacity, I think. I can always go back, and if I can find a tool nearby. What do I have? Give me one sec. Okay, so I found this. So you can see I've got some other lines. So I can start doing some more scratching and some more excavating, and that shows me and reveals more of what's underneath. So this is the beauty of not just scraping back your painting, is that you still have something to play off of. I find it's not the worst paintings, but I find the paintings that are sort of a little less interesting to me is the ones that are flatter, especially in encaustic, because we have all that great texture to play off of. And if you've scraped it all off, you've lost all that gorgeous texture. So I encourage you just to keep playing with it and see what happens. There we go. So you see I've just cut through some of the warm wax. And what this is doing is it's revealing the colors underneath, so then when I fuse them, so Sophie's asking if you can collage over wax. The answer is yes, but it's, again, everything you are going to do in encaustic poses more challenges, so I encourage you to go back to your painting with fire and rewatch the videos and all that, because there are some experts in the field. Wayne Montecalvo, one of them, who works with collage, and of course you can collage in your encaustic, and there are so many different ways. But like I said, it's challenging how you want to do it. You have to use the right adhesives. Do you use adhesives at all? Do you use wax? Do you use glue? So there's lots of things to consider. It's not just, I'm not going to give you a simple answer of yes, and then you go ahead and pull out your Mod Podge and do it all incorrectly. All the principles and all that, these are all learned, and basically you just have to play. So when people ask me, can I do this? I hate to say yes to everything, because if it's not going to blow up your studio and it's not harmful to your lungs, then go ahead and try it. Like if it's explosive, right, or if it's carcinogenic or something, then obviously don't do it. But if you're really just wondering, does this adhere to this? Does this stick here? Just try it. You've got nothing to lose. So I'm always encouraging students, as you know, to just try and see what happens. So that painting has very little done to it, and it's well on its way to becoming a painting. This one, on the other hand, like I said, it was very dark, and I had this gold down here. So there's still not a lot I would do with this other than start layering on more encaustic. So in my opinion, this one just doesn't have enough wax on it. It was just lots of thin layers, and I don't have any opaque wax to do that with right now, but I would probably just layer on some opaque wax and just start carving and just start experimenting with it to see if I can come up with something like this, where I carve through and I have my trees and I have a new story all together based on what was underneath. Same thing with this one. You know, there was nothing going on before, and now I have a painting. So the answer to the question of how do I redo painting is, I think it all starts with a torch. I love my Iowa Tawny torch. I think it's great for doing this. And yeah, so this would be, I think, your best answer. In my case anyway, this is my best answer to how to rework an encaustic painting. Start with your torch and just start playing and moving wax around, and trust me, it will actually feel good when you let go of something that's not working, and then you have a world of new possibilities laying ahead of you. All right, so I hope that helped today. I'll be back on Friday, and Friday we are talking about the pigments that we are now selling in the store, which to me have been like revolutionary, because I can make my encaustic colors out of them, I can make acrylic paints out of them, I can make chalk paints out of them. So on Friday we're going to be talking about natural earth pigments. Okay, so it's one paint solution sort of for all mediums, which is really nice because it's also super healthy and non-toxic and plant-based. So we're not getting any of those heavy carcinogens or what do you call those things, solvents in the paints, especially when we're heating them. So anyway, so see you on Friday, and at 11 we will talk about those things. All right, thanks for watching.